Hello, Purple.
Hello, Jim, Bill, Rebsy.
Hello, Damien.
Well, you're all suited up. Nice to see you. Now, tell us, big news around Cozzy Pickett, 3 weeks. What's going on there?
Yeah, you'll get 3 weeks, as we know from the hit on Darcy Moore on the Friday night game, and that will be flushed through the tribunal system during the week. I've got a sympathy for him in that action. I felt Darcy Moore took his legs.
Contributed to it. Yep.
Again, I don't feel that he had to be scot-free, Pickett, but I felt 3 was a couple too many.
He does choose to bump too often.
He does.
That's the only problem with Cozzy. He's got to try and understand that once you do that, your fate is taken out of your hands.
He's been told that too, hasn't he?
Yeah, many times. Yeah, the big one right now, and we won't know for probably another roughly an hour or so, but is the Liam Jones tackle on Aaron Cadman early in Sunday's game at Ballarat.
Didn't look good either.
It didn't, but we know what the AFL can do at times when they do, and they tell us they don't, but they do have a look at what's ahead, and there's a final for Liam Jones ahead. He hasn't played in a final, Bill, in 199 games of football.
So it will be his 200th game.
It will be his 200th game if he, his next game will be his 200th game.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Look, I don't think there's any malice in the incident, but if you line it up with what Lockie Ash got pinged for the previous week on Hayden Young, I know there's never, ever a situation where there are 2 incidents that are exactly the same. I get that. But I reckon those 2 incidents, a week apart, are about as close as you are ever going to get in the AFL system.
But Cadman was okay. Got up, kicked a goal.
But so too was Hayden Young after Ash
I
got
know.
him.
But I thought they look at how the player...
Well, they do.
Like, because in Cozzy's one...
Darcy Moore
went off, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yes, so,
But again, they can work backwards from certain scenarios. The AFL, but we'll know soon. Bill, anyway.
That will be very interesting.
It won't surprise me if he's
back to
free to play, and I hope he is.
I see you breeze past Cozzy very quickly there.
Yes.
Are you hearing anything about Cozzy maybe wanting to get out of Melbourne?
Yeah, the strongest talk about someone wanting to get out of Melbourne in contract is the Christian Petrarca one, which still just does not go away, and this is yet to be resolved from a Melbourne Footy Club perspective, and the talk just from other clubs, even today, has just ramped up to fever pitch as to the situation that is at play. We know that footy clubs that miss finals, Bill, have their exit meetings in the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after it. So at some stage of this week, the exit meeting officially will be had with Christian Petrarca, and we'll get to know more then because he hasn't communicated pretty much anything since he got injured on King's birthday. That's been clear with the narrative and the commentary from both his camp and I think equally importantly, the Melbourne camp last week. Simon Good was adamant, and even after the game Friday night, just kept referring to the state of play, that he's got a 5-year deal that will be maintained. But that's just his opinion on the situation. It's not where Christian Petrarca is clearly at headwise now. So it's going to be it's a big story if he chooses to stay now, Bill, as well.
Righto.
Yeah.
Terrible year. They've finished 14th.
Yeah.
Gold Coast, St Kilda, Essendon, all above Melbourne Football Club.
Yep.
They were 7-4, ended up 11-12.
Yeah, it just fell right away.
They've had a shocking year, haven't they? Really? And they added some injuries, and every club has.
Yep.
But terrible year for them.
Yeah, it is. So those exit meetings and the ones at Richmond too will be equally interesting from an in-contract.
This is yours. You went with this. Tom Lynch. You started all this. Now there's smoke.
Oh, there's smoke there, Bill, because the club in question, Melbourne, needs a forward. They're on record as saying they want a forward, and Collingwood is also saying that too. But the problem for those clubs who would like the talents of Tom Lynch is that there's a $1.5 million contract just for 2025 alone attached to it. So if you were to get him, Jim, you'd have to then add 1, maybe 2 years to the deal for a player that it's only managed 4 games in each of the past 2 seasons. And we know that he's got an unknown about his body side of it. But yeah, Richmond and Melbourne exit meetings this week are going to be the huge ones. Just back on what happened yesterday, I know you've already touched on it and the drama that it was yesterday. To me, and I know you're on the same page as me, Jim, but that was the wildcard round that the AFL has been talking about introducing for next season. So the second last and last games of the official home and away season, games 206 and 207, that was the amount of games in a home and away season. Yeah. There's your wildcard.
Oh, what about the St Kilda Carlton finish? I'm watching it going... How does that happen? Nearly kicked it out in the full.
He had such a curve on it, didn't he?
Yeah, and it was Kemp who had the set shot.
Oh, Kemp had this,
very nearly kicked it out on the full from 30 metres out, almost directly
the moment
in front.
got him, unfortunately, for Brody.
And then it goes down the other end.
Filippo.
And Filippo, he flushed his better, but still missed. I'm thinking, this is just what is going on.
And a bloke who can kick, got it.
But that never was going through either.
No,
it just floated.
I think it was with him. He knew he had to get that curve on it to get it around.
The ball didn't spin.
I loved
it was
it
literally
wasn't
just
spinning.
Yeah, it was
spinning.
was
What about
amazing.
the goal umpire? He just said goal
Yeah.
straight away.
Yeah,
I
great
like
call.
that.
I like it.
Speaking of that, the goal umpire, they found the dick that threw the
No,
water.
not yet. The person was, I
sorry.
suppose, lucid enough to know to get out of the stadium the moment.
Not on that.
It was done.
No,
No,
that's
and it
disgraceful.
just has to be a life
Yep.
ban, and,
Exactly.
and I hope a life ban from all forms of football. I know you can't police that, Bill, but
Because you know what we
deserve to
don't
be
want?
allowed anyway.
Plastic or whatever up in front of the cheer squads and all that. That's what'll happen
Yeah.
if this crap
that
goes
was- that
on.
was
It
rubbish.
cannot happen.
That's
No.
appalling.
It can't.
Pauling.
Yeah, so the Carlton team was the positive to me. I say that knowing they lost the game of footy, but there was a form of courage what they did the past fortnight. Go to Perth, beat West Coast. And again, just to remind people, they weren't favourites in that game.
No.
They then weren't favourites against St Kilda yesterday. It would have been an issue, I think, for them, had they fallen away. Now, they were twice down by 20 points yesterday, retrieved that, got back in front. Had it been a 6 or 7 goal, 8 goal loss, which at one stage it may have headed toward until Paddy Cripps did his heroics, that would have been, I think, a problem for them to try and regroup and somehow try and prepare for an elimination final now against Brisbane. But
They've
they
lost
toughed
6
it out.
of the last 8, by the way.
Yeah, I know,
so-
and the ones they've had are not big-name teams.
Exactly.
No. But they've also done it, Bill, as we know, with the injury list that had as many as 19 on it at one stage. So the big talk now is how many they get back and how much they roll the dice on some of those players. I mean, Curnow, if he plays, is not going to be right. Mackay is in that same boat. McGovern is another one. Chera. The Tom de Koning
You
situation
can't
too.
take them into a big final,
No, you
all with question marks on them.
No, but I think you may as well, because if you don't, you're not beating Brisbane. So
I tell you what you do. You stop Cripps.
yeah, well, they did that in the last quarter, St Kilda, didn't they? To a point.
That's
he's
all you
still,
got to do.
Yeah,
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah,
With a bloody
still went on to him.
4-2 or something.
So no, I was really impressed with how they did that. And just one more little line on what happened yesterday too. It was 2022 when Carlton lost the last 4 games of that season to miss finals by a 0.0% or whatever it was. And that was the scenario at play yesterday when Fremantle lost its 4th game in a row, which allowed them the passage into the finals. Port Adelaide, what a story. Just go back to round 15, Bill, when
right.
Kenny was go back
Yeah,
to the
getting
little
booed,
checklist.
and everyone was saying he's done. And
Yep.
So they got beaten by Brisbane Lions by 79 points.
And they've lost 1 game since that.
Yes.
They've won 6 in a row. And
They've won 8 of 9.
8 of 9.
Yeah.
On top of all of that. And that game they played yesterday in Perth against the Dockers, it was a finals-style game. It'll put them in good stead. The one, well, not the one big issue, but the big issue for them now is not having access to Houston, who was suspended for the 5 weeks last week for his hit on Rankin. And then I think equally significantly losing Kane Farrell in game yesterday. He was putting together a really good game of footy in that game. He's a really good player. He was going to have to cover a part of the absence of Houston, and now they're out without those 2 key playmakers for what lies ahead.
I know you said before, Fat, that everyone has injuries, but there are injuries and injuries. Pierce, Darcy, and Tracy.
Yeah.
You
They
can't
are
make
huge
excuses
players.
for Freo.
No,
you
Fat,
can't.
those
They had
3 injuries.
They had 2 home games over there. They should
Fat,
have won.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
should
they
have
are
won.
3 vital players to what they try and do.
Pierce is
And they're-
old.
Pierce is one of the best defenders in the comp.
Yeah, he's had a good year
He
this
has a
year.
very good year.
Darcy.
Tracy is their number one
yes,
forward.
I'll give you Tracy.
And Darcy is their best ruckman.
Luke Jackson.
No, he's not. Luke Jackson's not close to Darcy in the tap.
But they lost 2 games, Jim, over
Fat,
there.
I
They should
know,
have
but
beat
I feel
Geelong.
for
The
him.
Geelong game, and the one before that, Bill, was the Essendon loss. That was the one they
Yes,
that
5
has
points,
really
exactly,
cost them.
that's it.
Obviously, they
But-
win that, they're in.
I know, I'm not saying
No.
that they haven't got themselves to blame, but they're 3 massive outs.
After round 20, they were 2 points clear in third. They were equal second after round 20, and
I
they
know.
just went lost.
You take the 3 most important players out of any team, Fat, it's harder to win. Take
Go to
Jezza,
it,
all right. Take Jezza out of your mob.
Then
Who plays full
Hawk
forward
will
for you?
stand
No,
up or
Hawk's not
someone.
playing.
Scratcher. Scratcher. Neil.
Scratcher's going to suddenly turn into Gary Ablett
Reece
Senior.
Stanley.
Now, negatives?
Well, a few more positives.
All right, I like it. I
Oh,
like
geez,
it.
all
Let's rattle through a few more. So the Western Bulldogs had to win yesterday. At the stage they played the game to be guaranteed, and they did. And it was a really good, hard-fought win. And you could see what it meant to them after the game. They did let a little bit of emotion flow, and I think that's fair enough too, because of where they've come from and how they'd sort of left themselves in that situation.
And the coach, he was
And the
under the
coach,
pump.
has been. The move of Rory Lobb through necessity may well be judged, depending on what happens in the next month, Bill, as the move of the year. He was outstanding. I thought Bailey Dale was really good. He's had a really good year, I reckon, Bailey Dale, after that early season subbing situation that he had. Even Jones coming in, little Artie Jones late in the piece for his first appearance for the year. He just had an impact when they needed him to, and obviously Bontempelli set it up again, as did Ed Richards. So good performance there. Hawthorn just on that barnstorming surge now, and as always against what they did against North Melbourne, 124 points in total, but it's such an even spread. You could put up 5, 6, 7 names, and you wouldn't be wrong in saying that person was the best player on the ground. And I know you've been big on this guy, Jim, for some weeks already, but Massimo D'Ambrosio, the role he's played and is still continuing to develop.
He is the snare of the year.
Yeah, he may well be. Yeah,
it's just incredible the footy he's playing.
Essendon
Beautiful kicker.
just let him go.
Yeah, they had him, obviously, and he played last year for the Bombers, and then the Hawks just swooped and were into him prior to that trade
Who wins
period.
their best and fairest?
Merit.
It's a really good question.
No, this is, Hawthorn.
It's a really good question because Will Day missed the first 6 games.
Mate, there's about 10.
I reckon Connor McDonald's a massive chance.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah.
Weddle, is it?
Weddle, yeah,
Weddle's
he's
very good
had a good year.
player.
Yeah, John Newcomb's had a really good
Newcomb,
last 2 months, so maybe even 3 months, but it was a slow start.
D'Ambrosio
I think.
kicks it
He does.
beautifully.
Yeah,
He's
does.
elite.
Yeah, he is.
5 foot.
Yep. Brisbane Lions, look, removed its chances of top 4 with those 2 losses in consecutive weeks, rounds 23 and 22, Collingwood and GWS, but did what they had to do against Essendon on the weekend. Lockie Neal, you'd think, gets another 3 votes, 40 possessions. There were nearly half of those possessions or disposals were contested, which is what he's been
What
doing
about the
all year.
Brownlow?
Yeah.
It could come down to 3 of them.
Bloody oath it could.
Who've
Hey,
you
well
got?
done on the other side of that game to my man Archie Roberts, who's my young bloke George's best mate. Had 29.
Yeah.
He's
Coming
slotted
late.
into that
Just
comp
signed up
beautifully, hasn't he?
extension.
he did, yes.
Only played 3 games and signed on.
He's taken him a long time to bust his way in, but when he's in, he's playing very nicely. Well done, Arch.
Well done, Arch. Just on the Brownlow too, Bill, you
Yes.
mentioned Lockie Neal there. Obviously, Cripps may get votes for what he did
Dacos.
yesterday, but may not as well. But Dacos almost certainly will from
He gets
Friday
3.
night.
That
Yeah.
could win it for him.
Yeah. And then you've got Bontempelli, who, again, may and I think should get votes for what he did
Yes.
yesterday as well. And
If he gets nutted again, if he's in the top 2 again,
don't.
you can't. He's a champion,
well,
this
last
man.
year was the one where he, in the last round, wasn't it? And then the 2021 year when he had 33 votes, but that was still 3 short of what Ollie Wines had. So, yeah, one more positive. Nick Blakey.
the Lizard.
He's every bit as good as those celebrated Swans players, the Warner, Heaney, Goulden trio. But he just doesn't get the same headlines, does he? And yet, when one of them was out, Heaney was rested for that game against Adelaide, and Blakey just was, in my eyes, clearly best of field in
when he
that
gets
game.
slithering, it's just magnificent. Yeah.
I tell you, the Cats up by 100 points at half time.
Yep.
It's only happened 8 times in the history of the game
Is that right?
to lead by 100 points at half time. That was good.
Yeah.
Thought you could have given that.
How many times it happened when you then win by less than what you were leading at half time?
Yeah, that's the first time.
Yeah. Okay.
8th time and the first time.
And Jesse Hogan, well done.
Yeah, well done for him. Yeah. Negatives.
Yes.
We have sort of touched on the Fremantle situation, but and I know what you were saying, Jim, and I do subscribe to what you
Don't
said with
mention
the
them.
absences of those
No, they're
key players.
very important to him.
But to go from third after round 20 to missing entirely is a burden they need to carry. And I just feel there's a lack of urgency around that operation sometimes. At the start of the year, they were very conservative, as they often are. They then got rolling with some nice game style. Parts of their game yesterday against Port was finals worthy, but they were forced to play that way because Port was playing that way. But anyway, they've blown up another season after making and winning a final in 2022,
They're good
Bill.
enough. They've got a good list.
Yeah. They still will argue
some
that they're
holes,
still
I reckon.
tracking
Well, they got 3 picks,
for 2 or
haven't
3 years.
Early.
Yeah, they've got early picks already. So they're massive players. And what happens with the Shea Bolton situation is going to be huge in that space. Adelaide, you know my views by now, but to get through this season with just 8 wins next to their name. There is a draw as well, but it's only 8 wins, Bill. It's not a win.
How did Rochelle go, by the way?
Yeah, the toughness that they sort of exuded last week about dropping him, for a dead rubber after carrying him all year and the comments around him. And I didn't see any sort of great attitudinal change in that performance against Sydney. They did what they often do. They looked okay at times and ultimately didn't beat a team that is better than them. And for 5 years now under Matty Nix, they've just had double-digit finish on the ladder. So big season for him coming up. We've touched on the Melbourne situation already, and that to me is where a lot of the stories will go as soon as this week, particularly with Petrarca eventually. And he has to say something publicly, or at least people around him on the record about what he's been going through, because I think he's handled it quite appallingly to this stage from that side of it, because he's let it fester. And clearly we now know, and we did know once he let that go 24 hours without addressing it, that it's real. So we'll see what happens there. And again, I don't know how we get through another season with North Melbourne. So they've won 15 matches, Jim, in the past 5 seasons.
Oh, the Saturday was appalling. It was just, it was bereft of any, to give your members and supporters any joy over the next 6 months. It was just, I was watching it going,
what is that about?
This is just getting worse.
Yeah.
And again, they have ridiculous injury, but you got to fix that. You know, I mean, this has been happening now for a long time, where they've had 7 or 8 of their best players unavailable pretty much every time they run out.
Yep.
So you can get that every now and then, but this has been happening now for a long time.
It
So
has.
they've got to fix
So
that.
they had 3 wins last year and 3 wins this year.
Yeah, and 15 since the start of 2020. 15. And just to put in context,
Fix it,
Hawthorn
Jim.
Footy Club has had 14 wins from the past 18 matches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 14 from 18 matches. North's had 15 in 5
Purple,
years.
What we discussed this. Small pressure forwards are as important as any footballer in the comp to a team.
You're big on
North
this.
Melbourne haven't recognised one in 5 straight drafts.
Yep.
Like tall intercept defenders.
Yep.
You had to go and get Griffin Logue out of Freo and Aidan Corr out of GWS. What about drafting some of these, people into your club so that Clarko can pick them on the weekend? I don't understand.
And the celebrations that they were patting themselves on the back about getting the draft picks on the back of losing Jason Horne-Francis when they didn't have an environment that he wanted to stay in. And look what he's doing in the 2 years he's been away from them.
He's
And
had a good year.
he's had an amazingly good year. And it was best on ground again yesterday at half-time of that big win for the Power against the Dockers, and was still very good in the second half. But yeah, they can't even. But they're not creating an environment, Jim, that wants people
I
to
think
stay.
the environment's better now, but I think you've got all this draft access. Bring people in that are going to play the roles you need. I would have thought. Nice to see you, Purple.
Likewise,
Home
Jim.
to finish off that bowl of red.
No, I finished it last night.
Oh,
Bill.
good
Yep.
boy. Well done.